Okay, today we're going to take a look at command line arguments and implementing those in your Python applications. And what I mean by command line arguments are just the list of strings passed to your program at runtime. So that would be like if you do ls dash l. The dash l is one argument. We could also do dash a, and that would list all files and directories in my current directory. In the dash l's list format, dash a is just for all, including the hidden files like dot and dot dot, which is current directory and the directory above. And then we also have like a dash h. So let's go ahead and start implementing these into a Python program. So the first thing we're going to need to do, we need to import the Sys module. This is short for system. This is where Python lets us access these arguments. And I always like to do a little if main check here. And what we can do is we can just actually print out sys.argv. And this is the command line arguments that are passed to our program. So if I go ahead and run our little program here, without any arguments passed, it prints out just the program itself. So the first argument is always your script or your Python file that you ran, whereas everything else is the arguments that we actually care about. So generally we're going to be ignoring this first argument here. And again, like I said, this is just a list of strings, and they're separated based upon the just a space character. So I could actually have something like a comma there, and that'll actually be in one of the strings. So important thing to keep in mind. So if we actually wanted to print all the arguments that we care about, well, we could do that like well, maybe one per line or something like that, right? So arg, and let's go back here to that. So I've still got that /args.py, and I guess I should also mention, okay, so some of you probably are still running your programs with Python 3, then the name of your program, which your actual script here, your Python file, is actually an argument for the Python 3 interpreter. So hopefully that doesn't make this more confusing, but we only care about everything that really comes after this, whatever the name of your Python file ends up being. So, and this should be the same, right? But we want to skip that first item. And if you remember, previously we've talked about taking slices of a list. So what I really want to do, if I don't want the first element, I can just say, hey, just give me everything from element at index 1, which would be element 2. From that, colon means from there to what? And then I'm not specifying anything, so that means from here to the end. And that'll give us 1, 2, 3, all of the arguments that we actually care about. So let's go ahead and write a program that maybe is a little bit more with some sort of arguments. So I'm going to import sys. Again, I like to have my little if main here. And say if the length of the sys.argv is less than 2, that means we didn't pass any actual arguments to our program, because it's always going to be, there's always going to be at least one element, which is the program that we're running, right? So that'll be, you know, in this case, it'll be loop.py. So it'll probably be /loop.py from how I run it. But we'll be like, so I want to know that they didn't pass any arguments. And so if the length of that list of strings is 2, actually we can do an elif, I guess. Then we're going to just do for yeah, let's go ahead and maybe save these to a variable instead, right? So we'll say, and we'll actually exit the program here. Exit 0 means everything was exited normally. So we'll say start equals 0, stop equals argv of 1. We'll actually want to convert this to an integer. We'll assume the user inputs that correctly for now. And we'll say step equals 1. So we're just going to print from 0 up to whatever that is. And if the length of that equals 3, then we're going to just copy this here and say start is the first argument. This would be second argument, and again still step. And then finally we got an else, and we'll just copy all 3 of these again. This time we only have to do this. So we're just going to print a for loop that'll go through the various ways in which we can do the range function. I guess we should actually make this an elif as well. We're going to be careful. Put that outside of our parenthesis. And then we might actually want to know that they passed in too many arguments. And we'll go ahead and exit there. So we can do what? Start, stop, and step. And we'll just print I. So our program is expecting them to pass in anywhere from 1 to 3 arguments. And it should print out an appropriate loop based upon what we pass in. So if they only pass 1, it's just going to print from 0 to that number by 1, which would be the default way in which the range function works. If we pass in 2 numbers, it'll be from start to stop and still stepping by 1, and then 3 does all 3 of the arguments for the range function. So let's go ahead and run this, make sure it works properly. We didn't pass in any arguments, so that works. Let's say we do 5. That looks right. So we're going to do 1 to 5. Yeah. And we could do 1 to 101, I guess, by 0 to 101, I guess, would look better by tens. And that looks good. And if we pass in, just some other gibberish, and be like, hey, you passed in too many arguments. So it's a good little warning. So this should be fairly straightforward, and it's important to understand these because this is how we're typically going to be passing in something like a file path. If we want to say, just like with something like CP, you want to copy one file from somewhere to somewhere else. We're going to have files that'll just open a file to read it to get data for our program rather than reading user input or something. So that'll make our life a lot easier. So as always, if you have any questions, contact your instructor and let them know.